Yes, right on time. Good morning, good
Perfect.
everything.
Good
Hello, Dr.
everything,
Carr.
y'all.
Hi. Hi.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, Prof? How you doing this
What a
morning?
what a
Good
week.
afternoon, evening.
Well, I did my little walk, so I'm good. I'm good. I'm grateful. I'm just we were just talking a little bit beforehand, they say people remember how you make them feel.
Yeah,
And I was contemplating because I know I go really hard in the paint and some people get a little like uncomfortable. And I don't want people to feel uncomfortable, because I need everyone to be free. I really do. But this
absolutely.
discomfort is where growth and change happens.
No question.
You will never get to your destination comfortably. Um,
Yes.
so I just had to remind myself that. But also I hope, people feel loved in this space. So
Oh, no question. We all feel love.
yeah.
We all feel love in this space. I mean, and love isn't all, you know, Western society. And we were talking about this this afternoon, this week. And I've had to pick up the senior seminar class at Howard because Dr. Adams, Russell Adams,
No,
94 years old, he finally said, "Okay, I'm, going to sit at home now." It's okay, no problem. I'll take this
I had a
cycle.
94-year-old professor. God bless.
Well, because he retired 15 years ago, but as Ms. Adams told me at the retirement, named Dr. Carr. I love my husband, but he can't stay at home every day because he ain't been at home 50 years. So therefore, I every day. That's a no problem, Ms. Adams. Doc got a job as long he don't want to hire me at Howard, so he can stay here as long as he wants, and that long as he wants was the better part of 15 more years. And finally, he decided that and
I'm
so
tired.
yeah, so we're doing it as a collective, but this year, I'm not going to speak on the remarkable incapacity to sync a schedule at the Negro College, but Mario and Valictia have classes at the same time. So I tell them I'll take the fall, and in the spring we'll do the
Wow.
cycle. We'll figure out time. So
Wait,
anyway, I'm just
for
saying that
people
to
who don't
say
know,
that.
that's like 1,000 students, Dr. Carr.
Oh no, this is actually very intimate. It's only
Oh, okay.
about 12.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
All right. Because I know you
yeah,
had
this
a
is
class
the
at
smallest class
like
I've ever
13.
had
I
at
said,
Howard. Actually, is it? No, the smallest class I ever had at Howard was my first semester in the fall of 2000. I had 4 students
oh,
because,
okay.
well, only because my name wasn't on the schedule.
I was
By
gonna
the time,
say at Hunter, my smallest class was 6 because they added me late.
exactly.
That was the most fun. I was
Yeah,
able to do so many things with those students, and to this day, that was my favorite semester.
really.
Yeah, well, 6 kids, we could just do everything. We could go on field trip. Let's go. Let's get
Let's
out
go.
the classroom. 6 people, you can do some things.
I
Yeah.
can't tell you how. That's why when we and you all we are figuring it out this summer. These road trips. That's why I proposed to that freshman seminar group the year before COVID that we would get an A team and get a bus and go through the South. We still gonna do that, except now, of course, it's jailbroken. It won't be Howard. Uh, it'll be some HBCUs, some black high schools, and all the rest of us. We're gonna figure that out. But yeah, because you can do that, as you said, when it's small. You can do that, and yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, I understand. At the same time that we embrace this, because right now between Nubia and YouTube, we got thousands of people, and then there'll be thousands more over the arc. This is something that we're experimenting with, and well, I won't say that anymore because when
No.
you saw this vision and then open it up like this, and then syncing it up with all these other valences, you know, yeah, this is love. In other words, this is where I was going when you said that in class this week we were talking about concepts in Africana studies and how because these are the Africana studies majors. They're taking their senior conference this fall, so we're getting them ready for the comprehensive exam, and so we're reviewing everything they've learned. And I said, I know it's been 3-4 years for most of y'all, but when you took Introduction to Africana Studies with me, we talked about methodology, we talked about terms, and so let's see where you all are on that. And so, somebody mentioned love, for example. In the West, love, romance, it's about passion, it's about desire and physical attraction, all those, in addition to whatever else they can say it's about. But we know that's Descartes, we know that's, the whole separation of mind and body, all that stuff that's very Western. And of course, these Africana cultures, regardless of the differences between them, at the end of the day, you see this common linking of desire and attraction to the capacity to build community. It's always about community. So, and of course, that's why we study ancient Egypt, is because it is one of the best examples in antiquity of this African principle as far back as we can get it. And then you see all the variations. one of the words for love, myrrh, has as a glyph a picture of a backhoe, of a thing that breaks up soil, as we've talked about many times. And so love is connected to your capacity to work on behalf of a community. When you say you love somebody, that's coming out your mouth. But what did you do with your hands? What did you do with your life? What did you do with your... So the love we feel here is the love that comes with our increased capacity, not only to survive, but to thrive as a community. Because, you know, you loved your mama, you love your daddy. I love my mom and daddy. I didn't always like what I had to do, but I'm grateful because that's where the love comes from. In those hard moments, I want to do this, but I know this is for my best. And sometimes I just got to trust, because you love me, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, this is the love. Yeah. The other love is not.
Yeah.
The other love has you on porn sites in the middle of the night talking about you're a black Nazi or like transsexuals. That's the other thing. You know, I love that. Yes, you do. You have a guttural, visceral, reptilian brain fueled desire. But what are you building out of community? That's not love the way we would talk about it, you know. So, you know, I'm sorry, Lieutenant Governor, but, you know, your embrace of that is a demonstration of the difference between love in the Western form and love. Because, you know, the other thing I say is, you know, it's interesting. Many years ago, I was on a panel with Taylor Branch. You probably talked to Taylor Branch before.
I don't think I have.
Okay. Taylor Branch, you know, as we both know, many of us know, we're a very interesting writer. You know, he did the 3-volume thing on Martin Luther King. Very interesting. So I was on a panel with him, and I think it was Donna Brazile was on that panel. We were at a church somewhere in DC, and we're talking about Dr. King. Might have been around King's birthday. And Branch talked about his theory that Dr. King engaged in all of these death-defying, life-threatening engagements and protests, and you know, and ultimately it took his life. But he said he felt like perhaps he was doing that to compensate for what he was doing in his private life. And I thought that was fascinating for two reasons. Number one, it's a very social structure analysis. And so, of course, I not only took it with a grain of salt, I kind of displaced Taylor Branch in the category in terms of Africana studies. You have to put him
salt over your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. You say what you want, man. But from a governance formation, this also resonates in a way, because if you're coming out of this Christocentric view, then you're looking at any behavior that is seen outside of social convention or socially accepted norms, perhaps as sin. And so in order to compensate from sin, you got to repent. And some of that repent is in how you behave. So I could see where Taylor Branch was going. I set out to say this: the love that somebody like a Mark Robinson or Sean Combs will claim they're displaying in terms of this fuel desire, at some point you trying to balance it. Set aside Sean Combs for a minute, because I don't know, but in terms of the Lieutenant Governor's public pronouncements, he is a Christian fascist. And so that Christian fascism, that totalitarianism, that Handmaid's Tale approach to religion is very much of a piece in terms of duality with the errant, aberrant, deviant behavior. That's what they do.
Equal and opposite.
Equal and opposite. There it is. Very Western. That's what you do. You know what you did at night. So in the morning, you got to get up and condemn everybody, because really who you're condemning is yourself. So you can't stop. Yeah, that's why Donald Trump at least is honest and say, I don't believe none of that shit, but I know y'all do. So let me show the deviant side. The deviant side improves my reputation with y'all, because y'all deviants at night. You know what I'm saying?
You know, it's wild that we live in with folk that really know their Bible, and they go to, you know, chapter and verse, and they'll may be in a church where the pastor's doing exactly what you're saying, and then they'll have to come before the church and say, I've sinned for God, and we have to all forgive him, because that's the process. But in that there's no acceptance. And what's wild to me, and I said this on the radio with this lady that called up, and I'm not voting because of this and that and what. I was like, okay. And I knew she was a Christian, Black lady. And I said, did God give us all free will?
Oh,
no. So, because her issue was abortion. I'm not voting for the party that allows for abortion. I was like, but free will. We all were granted it. So who are you to take it? Like, where is it in there? Free will. We're supposed to come with trembling and, in our own way, right? God he doesn't want us forced into a relationship with him or her or whatever, But it's so wild to me that that Christian fascist doesn't understand that the free will that was granted to us should be for all of us, and we should all make our decisions.
But why? Why though? Why should it be for all of us, Prof? Do you think?
Isn't it? I mean, listen, if your goal is to get people to heaven, right?
So is
right,
it?
it's the Great Commission, go out and
But those two different things, right? In other words, what's the first goal?
love.
Go get yourself to heaven.
Yeah, how about that? But they think they're going. They think they're the one, whatever. Their names are written in the book of life.
Okay.
So
So then the great commandment is to get others to go.
Yes, go and make disciples.
All right. So, and here I will give credit to the what they call them, deists, like Thomas Jefferson, who this isn't about God. This is about ethics. Give credit to them for trying to separate church and state, the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. Should the Great Commandment be enshrined in the United States context in the Constitution?
No.
Right. No. So in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, the Quran is a governing document. Correct. Is that what these Christians want to have in the United States? A theocracy?
I think they do.
So if that's the case, then it absolutely explains why they're against abortion. It's not a matter of public policy. There is no separation between church and state. This is the fascist Christian version of the fascist Muslims.
But I'm going back to the Bible doesn't say, it says a lot of things, and we should be washing our hands from here to, I'm like, ooh, New Testament, Old Testament, what y'all, if there's so much confusion.
Because they ain't read the Bible. As Khalid Muhammad used to say, when people come up to you and say, I just go by my Bible, Khalid would say, yeah, you just go right by it on the way to listen to whoever read it and gonna tell you what they want you to do to manipulate you. You just go right by your Bible on the way. They ain't reading that book. So,
but but it's a lot of them.
Oh, sure.
We're being dragged into something that makes absolutely no sense. And I'm hearing the repetitive, these talking points, and it's so saddening to me, because I'm like, I don't know how we break through.
Yes, you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep doing it because I'm stubborn, so I'm gonna keep going.
Well, yeah,
but
what you do 6 days a week in public, and then on the 7th day, plan on what you're doing for the next 6 days, 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. I mean, it's interesting though. As we're talking and we're thinking about this, there is a First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution that is supposed to guarantee freedom of speech and freedom of association. How ironic is, I remember reading this maybe about 10 years ago in a journal, and I can see the cover of the journal, and in a minute I might be able to name it, but this law professor was writing about how John Roberts, it might have been shortly after Citizens United, which was 2010. So maybe this is
which gave peopleship to corporations.
Right. Well, that go back to the 19th century in the wake of the civil rights cases, when they looked at the 14th Amendment, which was clearly, as Ketanji Brown Jackson establishes in her dissents, linked to the emancipation of human beings of African descent. But like you said, by the time the railroad companies really got their feet, hands, and whole bodies on the Supreme Court, the majority of people who ruled in the civil rights cases, and then by the time you get to Plessy 13 years later, had been former railroad attorneys. In other words, they began to look at those Civil War amendments and decide, how can we use these for our advantage? And then when you got a bunch of them on the Supreme Court, they basically say, in the words of Mitt Romney, of course, if you remember, corporations are people, my friend. And so
footnote before.
Yes,
I know you just got lovely ones. I'm listening to it, and it is so black.
Oh, no question.
It is so black, y'all.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is a black woman, right?
No, I'm getting black history, ways, black legal history. Like, the book is layered with all of these legal documents and rulings that have impacted our lives. It is kind of hiding the beacon in this book, and I'm so, from her family, her parents and grandparents, I'm enjoying the hell out of getting to know this woman.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, yeah, it's really something. And it's interesting you say that, because I'm looking at last week's New York Times, Sunday Times, and oh man, what I normally do is read the here we go. I will take out, like, if I'm traveling or I had to go somewhere, I'll take out the magazine the book review, the opinion page. I'll try to read the front section if I'm traveling, and then take those 3 with me. And then by the time I've gone through them, but I'm mentioning it because here it is. Yeah. And by the way, shout out to those of my students who came up to me so excited on Thursday after class, my Education in Black America class, because through the help of some of the adults at Howard, they were able to score a ticket to go sit in the Martin Luther King Library, which is, I won't say it's my favorite branch of the DC public library system, because I like a lot of them, including the one that David Ajay designed. The same brother who designed the National Museum of African American History and Culture designed the one on Alabama Avenue in Southeast DC. I love that one too. It's in the cut. But the Martin Luther King Library hosted Associate Justice Anika Brown Jackson for a public discussion of her book. And after class, because I encourage my students, I tell them, you should reach out to authors that you are reading, that we are reading, if they're still alive, and tell them how much you're enjoying the book and have any questions. One of my students did that with James Anderson, his book, The Education of Blacks in the South, and he wrote her back a very beautiful note, because she wanted to know, we all wanted to know. In fact, I didn't tell him, I kind of already knew some of it, but I didn't. I said, y'all should ask him, why did he order the introduction the way he did? And so this young sister wrote him, he wrote her back. Dr. Carr, he wrote me back. I said, of course he did. Because we reading books, when people write books, I'm not talking about the popular stuff that sell 1 million copies. I'm talking about those books that really impact us in a way that, touches us because of that scholarship. You don't get a lot of feedback beyond the people in those circles. And so when they get an email like that, I told them, you should try, see what happens. He wrote it back. Anyway, this sister didn't write. The other 2 young sisters, they didn't write Ketanji Brown Jackson, but they did get tickets to go see her. So I told them, I can't wait to get the report. That's going to be this Tuesday of how they felt. But this is from the Sunday New York Times last week. They have a section called By the Book, where they interview an author or a writer. This is Ketanji Brown Jackson. And it's interesting because they're asking her, they ask a series of questions to all these authors. And one of the questions that was asked was, are there any classic novels that you only recently read for the first time? Justice Jackson said, I'm gearing up. She hadn't read it yet. I am gearing up to read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I have it in paper and as an audiobook, which helps. Oh man, she hadn't read that yet. Now they did ask her, what's the last great book you read? She said Tamika Brown Nagin's biography, Civil Rights Queen, Constance Maker Botley and the Struggle for Equality. I look at it over there. I should go get it, but I'm not going to get it because we've talked about it before. If y'all go back in the archive, you'll see. She said, it's probably the last full book I've read outside of work. I was just so grateful that this extraordinary woman's contributions finally got the attention they deserved. But here's the thing that caught my eye at the end. The interviewer asked, who, like Constance Baker Motley, deserves a biography so more people are aware of her or his contributions? Now, as you say, lovely one, and I've only just begun it as well, just started it. Fascinating, like you said, brilliant writer. And she says in this interview, in fact, let me just give you her words on the piece that she wrote. Let me see. Look, why did you want a memoir that moves seamlessly between law and life? She said, I thought that a memoir about my ascension to the Supreme Court should introduce and focus in on cases that have some intersection with my personal narrative. And as it turns out, there's a lot of intersection because the law has had such a direct impact on my family, she says, and on the lived experiences of Black people in this country generally. So she's writing this with that grounding. And then the interviewer says, you've clearly cared about writing well from the earliest age. Was it difficult to hand the pen to a co-writer? Listen to what Justice Jackson says, because a lot of people have co-writers, right?
I mean, it's really difficult to extract from yourself. Obviously,
come on back.
The journalist is going to extract moments. You're not going to really reflect. Some things in your life you just gloss over because it happened to you, but it could be really poignant. I think everyone kind of needs somebody, even if it's just a sounding board, to write that kind of memoir.
I agree.
This was well crafted.
Well, don't go anywhere, because I'm gonna read her response, and I think we all want to hear what you have to say as someone who has collaborated, who have worked with so many authors, so many different kinds of. Listen, what she says. See what do you think about this? This is what she says to that question. She says, "I didn't hand this project over. I worked very closely with a brilliant collaborator who operated like my partner in pulling this memoir together. She did a lot of the fact gathering at the outset and put together an initial draft, but I'm a very heavily invested editor. Just ask my law clerks. I wrote several sections from scratch myself because I really wanted it to reflect my authentic tone and views. It felt like a joint venture." What do you do with that response?
It would be a dream to work with somebody like that. First of all, she's a Virgo. I love it.
Let's start there, right?
Love that. But she is brilliant. You know, lawyers read and write. You know, you went to law school. The foundational skill set is to be able to read and write, disseminate, and write. So there was no question in my mind that this woman had a heavy hand. I've written 35 books with different people, right? Some people couldn't read, but some people were brilliant but couldn't read. They definitely, some people could write, but didn't have the time, and so there's a lot of reasons. I know for her, and there's a lot of people that do books for money or do books because their agents told them to. So you have to suss through all of that. She didn't have to do this book. So as I'm listening to her, and it's in her voice, the audiobook is she's reading it, but not reading it. You feel it. This was something that I think will stand the test of time. It's one of those books that the way I imagine her thinking about it, a book that somebody will pick up 50 years from now and learn about the law as they learn about her family, as they learn about who this woman is and the choices that she made. But yeah, no, I'm not surprised that she had somebody, because you need just like you and I was often say, this in class with Carr may not work with anybody else,
No,
because
that's right.
Of both of our experiences, but also the way we, our chemistry. I'm gonna get out there. It's like it's a dance. It's a dance. So and that's important. I feel like we need collaboration. Everything magic happens in collaboration. It's not a singular experience. So anybody that thinks, I had an experience with somebody who's very famous who didn't want me to work with them because they didn't want there to be the appearance that I helped them with their book, because their ego was very, was built in this thing that they were really good. And I said to them, I was like, I would have a collaborator. I'm going to have a collaborator.
Come on.
It's not, there's nothing to be ashamed of, but that person and their book, while it did okay, I know you.
It could have done better. No question.
Yeah, you didn't talk about some of the most important things that would have put this book in the annals of, this is a book we're going to be reading for time immemorial.
Wow.
So I applaud her for that. Yeah. So I just say
that's something Jeanette said in the YouTube chat. Jeanette said she went to a reading. So I'm wondering what she has to say about it. And over in the Nubia chat, somebody said they're on the last chapter. I said, y'all got to come in and tell us in office hours what you think. So it looks like people are reading Nakia. There it is. Nakia Patrick Dowdy said the book is amazing. I'm on the last chapter. So yeah, it is something, isn't it? Because again, we can't trust what others say about somebody. Again, a social structure. No, who is she to us and who are we to her? And that's a very different thing. And so, yeah, I mean, Sonia Sotomayor's memoir was very, very insightful, very interesting, growing up Puerto Rican in the Bronx. I mean, it's fascinating to see. But Ketanji Brown Jackson, this is another thing. We didn't get one like that from Thurgood Marshall. No. As much as it's been written about him, he didn't, do that. And it would have been different anyway, as a Black man from, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and then through the 60s, 70s. This is something very different. This is one of our age mates in a way. This is kind of somebody who's coming into this space, but she's tied. So never forget when she was at 16th Street. I mean, it was last year in Birmingham, talking about all my family that came out of Black institutions and came out as saying, "Oh man, I would love to hear her talk more about that." And now we have it. So it's like, oh, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, Ketanji.
You and I, as I was walking this morning thinking about you and the books, it's important that we leave these fingerprints on a time, because the time ahead of us won't know, but for us leaving these fingerprints.
That's
They
right.
won't know. So we have to do these things. I'm saying this to you. We have to do
Absolutely.
these things.
And they had the same birthday as Constance Baker Motley and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Black cabinet education is
That's
just
crazy. That's crazy.
I mean, but like say Virgo, you guys, you said first of all. Oh, by the way, I don't know where y'all would find it now, which I'm embarrassed to say because they released it online. Did you see the long article, the long profile actually in last week's New York Times Magazine? Sarah Weiss, it's online if you want.
Hold it up. No.
She's been working on this for years because
See,
there's a doc.
Can we say something else too?
What's that?
Y'all know a meal needs seasoning. All of this microwave plastics that we're eating,
Yeah,
it's not nourishing.
no,
It takes time to do something.
no question.
You know, we want everything right now,
No
without
question.
recognizing that sometimes things got to sit in the soil for a minute and take root.
No question.
Worked on it for years. I haven't read it. I can't.
Years. Yeah, years. Because she had been, in fact, it's funny you say that because, you know, given the millions you've marshaled over the years to take action about things, and we know for a lot of people, you came to their consciousness as a result of the fight over the battle flag, the Confederate flag in South Carolina. But maybe you can get some traction, get us all organized around some traction around what I'm about to read. This is the article here. The Prince We Never Knew by Sasha Weiss. But watch this. She starts with, of course, the Prince lyric here in the beginning of the article. She says, dig, if you will, a small slice of Ezra Edelman's 9-hour documentary about Prince. Y'all know Ezra Edelman probably from the O.J. Simpson Made in America documentary. Dig, if you will, a small slice of Ezra Edelman's 9-hour documentary about Prince, a cursed masterpiece that the public may never be allowed to see. I'll leave it with that, with this comment. She watched the whole thing. She's one of the few people on earth outside of people who did it that will see, because it's tied up now. The estate, all of the estate gave Edelman and his team full access to the archive, the vault in Minneapolis. They interviewed all these people. I mean, and she writes, that's why she took her years. They worked on it for years, and she was there for every bit of it. And she's interviewed all these people. And she, you know, by the time she worked on it, I guess it says now, she said over a year and a half. This is at near the end now. And then when she becomes aware of the documentary, then she goes into that. Over a year and a half, I had observed as Edelman continued to perfect his film, working to capture the essence of Prince, even as it became slowly, painfully clear that it would almost never likely air. The Prince estate has changed hands, and the new executors objected to the project. Last spring, they saw a cut and, claiming that it misrepresented Prince, entered into a protracted battle with Netflix, which owns the rights to the film, to prevent its release. As of today, there's no indication that the film will ever come out. It has been like watching a monument being swallowed by the sea. Anyway, so she writes, so to the point you're raising, you can't do this quickly, but maybe we'll get to see it, in part because the more people know it exists, particularly those insane Prince fans. I'm thinking about somebody who maybe one day will sit on the U.S. Supreme Court herself, Angie Porter, who it reminds me of Ketanji Brown Jackson in terms of that intellect, but also is of a different generation, and also from Rochester, Minnesota, but in the first ranks of insane Prince fans. Maybe she can get in the Army and help push this, because I think we all want to see this 9-hour documentary, particularly if you read this article. But I just mentioned it because it was in the same week, last week's New York Times, is the Ketanji Brown Jackson interview in New York Book Review. And
I also hope that young people who are aspiring journalists will read that piece, because I
yes,
when I was young, and deconstruct it and start to look at how the lead was, you know, even using that Prince lyric, but not the whole thing, and you know how each sentence was constructed. Like, deconstruct that thing, because there's nothing new under the sun. But good journalism and good writing, I think, is universal. Yes, I agree.
No, and don't go in, because, you know, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about how much each of us knows in our own experience, our own training, and then all the things we don't know that make us so much more powerful as a collective, and how that is the definition of love, that community work. And the thought occurs to me as I'm listening to you and saying, oh, now I got to go back and reread it. For that reason, having been instructed by you to do that, I'm wondering now, a question formed in my mind. I'm just going to ask you, do you miss the week to week?
You know, I had a long talk this week with Michael Harriet. No, listen, we had a talk because
I'm listening.
I am, you know, I have all of these things that I want to do.
No question.
But then it's like, where am I needed? And this hole that is in journalism, this lack, this unformed, you know, just kind of like noise that's out there and uninformed. You know, I was talking with him and I said, you know, the reason why I'm not in journalism is because there are no good editors, no really good editors. So we were talking about editors because collaboration, right? Great writers. I know that it was a team of editors that Sasha worked with. She wasn't just out there like Katanji with her collaborator. They
No
also have
question.
an editor, you know, like it's a group situation. And when I left the Daily News, I was writing a little bit for the Huff Post, and they would just hit send on my pieces, and I'm like, no questions. You just gonna and that's vulnerable for me because I could say something that's wrong. You're not gonna challenge anything,
Right?
I'm Karen Hunter. Yeah, I got to pull us in a poke, but I'm not infallible. I want somebody like I love editing and having good editors, right? So, yeah, I said to Michael, I was like, yeah, I don't trust anybody to edit me, and that's important. You know, even when like in the sports department that I worked in, there was a really good reporter named Michael K who came over from the Post, and he brought his editor with him, Barry. And I was, you know, a young reporter. I was in my 20s. I was like, how they hired his editor, you know, from the Post? Yeah, because he couldn't necessarily form this, you know, he was not the great writer, but he could get the interviews. So they brought his editor to make sure his stuff went out great. And it was in that moment that I realized, you know, this is a collaboration. It's not just all the great writers you see usually had great editors. What was Toni Morrison before she became a great writer?
An editor, Random House,
great editor,
Angela Davis, Huey Newton, all those, Ivan Van Sertima, they came before Columbus. Toni Morrison was the editor. That's exactly right.
Editor. So there's a certain, you know, there's a certain relationship that's important. So yeah, I would love to get back in. Maybe I'll get in as an editor, but that's not even my skill set. You know, I'm just like sad that there aren't people who desire to just make the words better and to challenge people to be better. Everybody wants to be out front, but great editors, you probably don't even know their names.
Well, that's just it. It was, but well, you know what was the white boy that just made transition? I watched. They did a documentary. His daughter did a documentary on him. Oh, it's going to bother me. Oh, white man, he lived in New York.
Where? Who did he work for?
You know, he might have done Robert Cairo. He might be. It'll come to me in a minute. He was in his 90s. Oh, it'll come. But the one I do remember. You remember that film when somebody in one of the chats will remember, but who I'm trying to think of. I did his profile in the New Yorker. I can see him sitting in that big library. But at any rate,
Robert Gottlieb.
Yep, Robert Gottlieb, avid reader. That's the name of his memoir, Avid Reader. Robert Gottlieb. Right.
I got you.
Yeah, you definitely got, no question. That's it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but yeah, because he did his memoir, Avid Reader, and then they did the documentary, and you see him laboring over those pages. And the thing reminded me what Jude Law played, was it F. Scott Fitzgerald? No. Thomas Hardy, Look Homeward Angel, the novel. Max Perkins was his editor. Remember, Scott Berg did the biography of Scott of Max Perkins, called Max Perkins, Editor of Genius. And he talks about him editing F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, but it was Max Perkins. So if y'all ever get a chance to watch the document, now it isn't a documentary, it's, you see the author coming in, because you know Hemingway, obviously raging white patriarch, race, race. Yeah. Exactly, you know what I'm saying? But Perkins is like, yeah, no. And then so much of it is not only hand holding, but before somebody puts a pen to paper, you're dealing with a person. What if you did this? I mean, it's just reason I ask you that, and thank you, because you know, as I go to class and I'm in, and Dr. Adams taught another 15 years after he retired, and he's 94 now. So he was 80 when he retired. I'm saying, for teachers, you never get out of that mode. And as I'm saying, there's not another minute in the day. We were talking about that too, y'all, before we came. How, you know, you got to reshuffle time, and you're doing all of these things and bringing all of us into all of this work. I'm saying, I know you don't miss the traffic. You don't miss, you know, at Hunter coming. And I'm saying, maybe a few little videos, 15, 20 minutes on this. I mean, because people need, I'm sure everybody in both chats is listening, and everybody's going to watch this later is listening. Like, I wish I had Professor Hunter in my class to help me, because I want to write, but I need somebody who, you know, there's such a shortage of people teaching writing, is what I'm saying, particularly in this point. So anyway, that's why I asked, do you miss it?
We're working on something, Michael and I.
Okay.
That was our conversation, because I said to him, and he reached out. Very few people actually reach out to me, which is weird. You know,
don't
like,
say that, because now they all gonna reach.
No, don't reach out. I'm unavailable. But that he did, you know what I'm saying? People who are doing things. And I said, it's like 50,000 people doing the same thing. And nobody ever sits to look up to say, hey, what if we work together and pooled our resources and, you know, made it easier for each other? Like, you know, like, who wants to do all of this by themselves? I don't ever want to reinvent the wheel. Trust anything that I'm doing. I've already reached out to people to see if they wanted to do it. And I'm doing my thing. And it's like, okay. All right, I guess, but this hole is over here. Don't you want to fill it? No, I'm doing my thing. I'm like, okay, all right, well, we'll fill the hole. And I'm saying I may not be the best filler of that hole, but I'm gonna try, and then hopefully people will come and help and bring some dirt. But yeah, we are, you know, we are people that are evolving in real time, and I'm grateful that I'm getting to see that. You know, we had another conversation this morning about, you know, people's desire to want to be in knowledge and community around this knowledge and rolling up their sleeves. So yeah, there's a lot of kikiing going on. There's a lot of commentary about freak offs and things I never ever wanted to talk about.
Never wanted to talk about. Never wanted to talk about.
But here we are. And it's,
well, and when the word is funny, because today we were thinking about the whole concept of when the word is given, and we're talking about when the word is given, the word, speech, voice to voice, life to life. And that's Lloyd in the YouTube chat too. He reading it well. And I'm like, oh wow, see, this is why we're all in community together, because you're talking people. Jeanette said people were buying 2 or 3 books at a time, and that Anita Hill was at this signing that she was at. Of course, Anita Hill is very poignant now as Mark Robinson reaches out to his brother, his deep brother, conceptually, Clarence Thomas. It was October the 11th, 1991. I never forget, because it was a Friday night. We were in Columbus at the with the Kelseys at the African Center, watching Clarence Thomas tell the world that he was a victim of a high-tech lynching. But earlier that day, it was Anita Hill who had said, when we was working at EEOC, Clarence Thomas, she was 35 years old. It's hard to think that how young they were. So when we were at EEOC, Clarence Thomas would tell us about the porn he was watching, how he liked the big-breasted women, and he liked human on animal sex, and how he kept asking me out and say, who put a pubic hair on my coat? Yeah, this y'all, Chief Judge. So you knew who he was before he got on the bench. And so when Mark Robinson says, you know, like Clarence Thomas, people say, oh, no, they're kin, friends. They are kin, freaky kin. And so
I don't think he this is not the flex that he thinks it is, calling this a high-tech lynching.
No, it isn't.
It worked for Clarence Thomas. We are in different times.
We are in different times. And of course, you know what? Hey, y'all, I promise you, we don't have a script. We don't rehearse this. It's interesting you use that phrase, because the person, of course, who chaired the committee, who asked Anita Hill to give the testimony, and then closed it off as Jesse Helms and Strom Thurmond and them said, this is our boy. So he didn't allow any of the other women to testify at any length to say, or some of them not at all, of course, was Joseph Robinette Biden, who was the chair of the Senate committee, right? But as you say, that's not the same Joe Biden. It is the same Joe Biden, and it's not the same Joe Biden today as it was in 91. Would he, if we went back, would it be a situation where he blocked Clarence Thomas? Perhaps. But of course, as you say, we're living in different times. And so it's just interesting that you would say that, because it is a reminder that history is instructive to help us understand the rhythms, the patterns, things that are going on, but it is also not inevitable. You can change history. In order to change history, however, you have to be cognizant of what is going on. And so the reason I even picked up this last week's New York Times Book Review with the interview by the book with Ketanji Brown Jackson wasn't related to the whole conversation we've had, even though we know as it is in divine order. The prompt for this week being when the word is given, and what that means, that we start with the word, and we start with the fact that, as the ancient Egyptians would say in the book of Tau-Tep, the limits of one's knowledge are never reached. You can never know everything. And when you start with that attitude that you are seeking to work together and to work communally, but with what the Egyptians might call the Shemsu, the companions, as Aikwe Arma translates that term, you understand that only through the collective can we advance. And because everybody and people, nobody knows everything, which is why I thought about this quote. There's a question that the interviewer asked Associate Justice, being premature, so I say Chief Justice, Associate Justice Jackson, who, like Constance Baker Motley, one day maybe, and y'all mess around, let this fascist get in, since there will be no more elections in the United States, we'll see, who, like Constance Baker Motley, deserves a biography so more people are aware of her or his contributions. This is her answer. Now, this is a woman well accomplished, brilliant, hardcore intellectual, also very much front facing, her book, her life, bringing people along with her, particularly people of African descent. Listen to the answer. And remember, as Tau-Tep wrote, the limits of one's craft are not reached. The limits of one's knowledge isn't reached. Nobody knows everything. Listen to what Associate Justice Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson says. She says, I recently discovered an 18th century figure named Prince Hall from an article by the Harvard professor Danielle Allen. Hall was an African-American man and former slave from Massachusetts who became an activist for American liberty and Black emancipation in the late 1700s. According to Professor Allen, he was the first American, quote, to publicly use the language of the Declaration of Independence, end quote, to promote the abolition of slavery, period. This is a story that should be told. Ketanji Brown Jackson is ignorant of Prince Hall. Doesn't make her ignorant as a person, doesn't make her everything that she is, but reminds us that the limits of one's craft are not reached. And if you put a whip to my back and said, I'm going to hit you with this whip, if there are no Prince Hall Masons in Order of Eastern Star and Ketanji Brown Jackson's line, I am fairly certain that I would not be hit with the whip. But she ain't read Prince Hall yet. She just become aware of him through another woman, Danielle Allen, who used to be at the University of Chicago, Black woman. And she's reading Prince Hall through a social structure lens. Bet you dollars to donuts when she gets into Prince Hall and begins to realize, number one, what Prince Hall said, which was a searing critique of this funky ass settler colony, coming from somebody who understood the African history that predates the United States. Number one. And number two, when she finds out that the organization that he organized there in Massachusetts, the African Lodge, changed its name in tribute to the ancestor to the Prince Hall Masons, and the light bulb goes on for her. She gonna say it's probably already happened because this interview was probably months ago. And she's, oh yeah, my Uncle Charlie, Prince Hall Masons, I'll do Order Eastern Star. Damn, well, I'll be damned. Oh man, I should have go back and tell that interviewer, okay, I didn't remember. Trust me on that. It's fascinating how a governance formation, because people reading that will look up Prince Hall and think, oh, he was an American patriot. Don't do that. Don't do that. Was he an American patriot? Was he an American patriot? Y'all heard me quote this book many times, or at least cite it for you as a book that is very interesting. This is Cecilia Elizabeth O'Leary's book, To Die For, The Paradox of American Patriotism. I've been revisiting this book lately, primarily because we are living in a moment when this is interesting. This is a statue that's no longer there. Remember, y'all forced it to be taken down. It used to be on Confederate Row, what they call Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia. This is when they dedicated it, 1907. That, of course, is Stonewall Jackson from Richmond, Virginia. He ain't there no more. I think they got him on some private land. You know how them hillbillies are. No, I'm sorry. That's Robert E. Lee, not Stonewall. This is the Robert E. Lee, with the Confederate flag and flowers there as they dedicated it. It ain't there no more, so you can't do what we often did, which was pay our respects to it every time we come through Richmond. Those respects were usually delivered in saliva. But the the reason I'm raising that is to die for what Professor O'Leary, who was in the UCal system, she's emeritus now, is retired. She raises a question in this book: who gets to claim the American flag and determine the meanings of the republic for which it stands? Okay, I have no investment in that funky settler flag, so I don't think I could. I might, but I think I couldn't care less about that. But what's fascinating is the battle over the concept of what it means to be a patriot, what it means to be what would conventionally be called an American, a citizen of the United States. And we see that Junior Varsity Vance was in Ohio, which he claims to represent in the Senate, saying that he doesn't care whether or not the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio are there legally or not. He's going to continue to call them illegal. And people are saying you can't do that. He's reminding us, this junior varsity bastard, that you can. There he is with his disheveled, hillbilly looking self. He wrote an elegy, however, of course, from the people he came from and everything, and for his previous life. Here it is. Vance says he'll keep calling Haitians in Springfield illegal, but most are legal. What is interesting is another white nationalist, who's the governor of the state, who helped foment this hatred, but now is afraid of the thing that he has helped create. And like Steve Urkel, finger in mouth, is saying, no doubt, in the governor's mansion, did I do that? Is Mike DeWine. He says, I'm Ohio's governor. Here's the truth about Springfield. On the op-ed page of today's New York Times, he says the city is having a resurgence, in part thanks to legal migrants. He said, Springfield today has a very bright future. The people who live there love their families, value education, work hard, care about one another, and tackle the challenges they face head on, just as they have for over 200 years. Yeah, I won't touch that. He says, I'm proud of this community, and America should be too. It's too late, man. You helped unleash this with your appeal to white nationalism, which brings me to the point. Prince Hall, Peter Salem, Salem Poor, Christmas Addicts, all those cats back in 1776 to 1787, the birth of the so-called United States of America, are read in most conventional books as patriots, history books as patriots. Y'all know I collect curriculum stuff, and if I could put my hands on it, I probably won't be able to do it because oh wait, maybe it's in here. I might have taken this with me yesterday because I just got my hands on this little pamphlet, one I didn't have before, and if I can find it quickly, I may have taken it with me. Yeah, here we go. This actually, it's called Illustrated Black History. This is a little piece I found. This was actually from the school board of Dansville, New York. It was published in 1970. The reason I collect these curriculum, and this is for everybody who writes curriculum. And by the way, Dr. Courtney Wilkerson, you came in the office hours. Everybody in Nubia, if you haven't looked at the Introduction to Africana Studies first session that we had for the first hour of office hours on Monday night, last Monday night, please go back because we're going to do the second session this coming Monday. But that second hour, most of the second hour was a conversation with Dr. Courtney Wilkerson, a brilliant sister. She's currently the principal of Theodore Roosevelt High School here in the District of Columbia, and just a master teacher. She put on a master class in how teachers need to think, and how educational administrators need to think about ourselves, about our children, about our futures. And she grounded it in this wide-ranging awareness of, study of, and connection with the deepest of our deep thought traditions. It was a brilliant moment. Just made me think about this, made me think about her, because I went back and rewatched it. I told y'all on Monday night I was going to rewatch it and I think that it has to be transcribed and used as the first draft of an article, a book chapter, or really a book, a short book. Because for every educator, it made me, in fact, Doc, it made me go back to pick up our brother, Kofi Lamoti, who you cited on the way in the conversation you were making. His the brother, good brother Kofi Lamoti, one of the co-founders of the Council of Independent Black Institutions. Kofi's book, Justice for Black Students, Black Principles Matter, which, connecting with the trend, but what it really is, in addition to other things, is a mediation on a lifetime of teaching, because he comes out of the independent Black institution movement, the IBIs, as they used to be called. And then that sent me back to Malima Shuja, too much schooling, too little education. I spent a great deal of this week, Dr. Wilkerson. I just want you to know, Sister Courtney, who was, of course, with us, she and her partner in Kemet when we were there back in August. And I just tell you, so much of what you said resonated with my spirit, with my mind, the need to be quiet, to be still, to listen, sajim, as the ancient Egyptians would call it, and to then speak with that informed kind of deep listening and engage life to life. And as an educator, I just want to say, sis, how deeply grateful I know we all are for you and for the work that you continue to do. But I thought about Courtney in a moment as I was going through this latest little piece out of hundreds now, these curriculum things I've had since we really started working on the Philadelphia curriculum back in 2005 and 2006 for the not only for freedom schools, which we've been doing for a while before then, but for the mandatory African American history course that's now in Philadelphia. None of that stuff is being used today. Brother Ismail Jimenez is over African American studies for the school district of Philadelphia. He's doing a phenomenal job. And as he is doing that job, I'm constantly reminding him and reminding everyone that we have to have the momentum of memory. I didn't write a word in the Philadelphia curriculum before I went back and reviewed as many different curriculums as I could, because I know that the history of teaching history in the desegregated schools in the United States did not begin in 2005, 2006. It didn't begin with the AP African American Studies course. It didn't begin with this attempt to write curriculum from outside the schools. It began with the first teachers who found themselves in there. And so anyway, I won't get too deep into that because we're going to have an abbreviated in class today. We're not going to go for much longer. We're going to do a quick breadcrumb this morning. But this is a teacher's guide. Again, it's from Danville, New York. It's very thin. And there you see some of the Reconstruction congressmen and senators there. But the reason I raise it is because you see on the verso page, the overleaf, you see one of the Benin bronzes there. It starts in Africa. But as I always say with these curriculum, they start with Africa and then very quickly leave Africa, because the narrative that we have been trained to embrace now, especially, embraces an African foundation now, but it gets away from it very quickly. So this is the same skewed view of Black life that informs all of the curriculum, all of the movies, all of the books that are generally promoted. I don't care about intent. I'm talking about a conceptual issue. I'm talking about what Jacob Carruthers would call intellectual warfare. See table of contents? There it is. Oh, African origins. Okay, number 1, chapter 1, page 1, teacher's guide, page 4. Oh, we're going to spend 5 pages. Then what? Oh, we got to go to it. Slave trade, colonial period, Revolutionary War, 1812, Southern slavery, abolition, Civil War, research, Jim Crow, early 20th century, fight for equality. Boom. This is 5 years after the Voting Rights Act. So you can't do Obama. You can't do the first Black elected officials that take up the Congressional Black Caucus. The fight for equality means this is the civil rights chapter. If you go to chapter 10, page 52, you'll see it begins with the most significant event in the post-war civil rights movement was the Supreme Court decision of 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. The court declared, it's the conventional logic. You're not going to get anything that's going to rock the boat, which is not a dig at this curriculum. In fact, let me just read you the first paragraph to let you know that all the people talking now about we're finally bringing Africa. No, this has been the case all the time, which lets you know it hasn't penetrated, because the project of the United States isn't about where you came from. For you, it's about where you are now. Now, people say, well, that's true for everybody. It's not true. That's why y'all know the name George Washington. That's why you know Pizarro and Cortez. That's why you know the name not only of James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, but Locke and Rousseau. That's why you know Adam Smith, and don't know nothing about nowhere anywhere else. It is always, as Anderson Thompson used to say, history is about the future, but that future is grounded in a narrative about the past. And when that word is given to you as a child, when that word is given to you in elementary school, in junior high school, or middle school, now high school, when that word is reinforced, it's given to you in college, when that word is given to you in movies, how many more times are they going to remake the stories of the American patriots and add 2 or 3 more Negroes and a couple of Indians in because y'all making noise? No problem. But what we're not going to do is change, because when the word is given, it's given that way. This is what they say, a 1970, not a 1619 project, not a new curriculum, not an AP course. This is what they say. First paragraph, 1970. Most people know that Negroes were not indigenous to the United States or North America. Their homeland was Africa. where their roots of heritage stretch back to antiquity. But few people have taken the time to find out what sorts of societies or cultures the blacks knew and had developed in Africa prior to their uprooting and forced migration to the New World. Textbooks of the past have not distorted the facts as much as they have ignored them. This 1970, friends. In the 100 years since the Civil War, little has been done in American schools to investigate early African culture. All emphasis has been placed on instruction about white Western civilizations. True then, true now, friends. That was the first paragraph. Oh, I'm just going to have to read this second one very quickly. Consequently, to many, Africa is the dark continent with baby oil and wait, sorry, that's not there. All right, sorry, let me read it again. Consequently, to many, Africa is the dark continent with black Nazis. No, that's not there either. Wait a minute, sorry, let me try again. Consequently, to many, Africa is the dark continent, a land of Tarzan, jungles, wild animals, and natives that is there. These impressions are due largely to the unrealistic adventures seen in movies. We tend to think of the Negroes as always having lived in a primitive society with sex parties and no, that's not there. We tend to think of the Negroes as always having lived in a primitive society with freak offs. No, that's not the thing. Try it again. Okay. We tend to think of the Negroes as always having lived in a primitive society and as being a simple, if not savage people. Unfortunately, the cannibals and pygmies and war dances dramatically depicted in films of the past 40 years, like The Players Club and Slim and Thug, and no, that's not there. Unfortunately, the cannibals and pygmies and war dances dramatically depicted in films of the past 40 years have influenced our thinking and developed a warped caricature of the Native African and of the Black American and of the Black everywhere. Let me put this back in this bag. What I'm raising is that as we grapple in this society with a question of who gets to be considered a full human being, we have to remember that that is tied to contested ideas of what it means to live in a society. And that contestation is further complicated by the challenge of narratives that are set up to exclude, that will have people believe with their whole heart that what they're doing is righteous, which allows them to be manipulated by other people who couldn't care less about anything other than their self-interest, that will allow a whole ass convicted sexual assaulter and madman to be one breath from the presidency of the United States, and a purebred cynic who would throw his own people community under the table as white trash if it can give him one more step on the ladder to success that he found in Silicon Valley with his billionaire friends. And now he steps one step closer, the true Manchurian candidate, to the vice presidency. Because remember, in Oliver Stone's remake of the Manchurian Candidate, the person the corporations put in the White House was not the president, but the vice president. Then the plan was to assassinate the president. Now, Trump, you worried about, or you claim to be worried about, because last I checked, the cat hasn't been charged with trying to kill the president of the United States, but some other charges. Who knows and who cares about that at this point? But the people you might should want to be looking twice at Donald John Trump ain't them hillbillies in the bushes with whatever they was doing with the gun way away and with no sight line on you. The people who are up in your face, the ones giving you the $1 million checks, my friend, because that guy you got as the vice president, that's the Manchurian candidate, Junior Varsity Vance. Ask Peter Thiel why you begging him for money, or your friend Iron Man, Bizarro Tony Stark. That would be, of course, Elon Musk. But those people are amoral. They got another plan for you. But they understand that what sells, what moves people, masses in this society, is people believing in something. People are always looking for something to believe in. To quote Annie Lennox, everybody needs, something. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's looking for something, And during, the same era as Prince, but that's a story for another day. Prince understood that. Let me put this back over here because I'm going to keep this one. I only have this one copy, print copy. Y'all can find it online. Now, if you don't already have a print copy. But the point I'm making is that this question of when the word is given is a question of narratives. People consider themselves patriots, and they think what they're doing is the right thing. John Roberts understands that. Much of fascism hides behind true believers. I remember in Zingarata Bisha Heru many years ago told me I had to read The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. the former longshoreman who wrote about a lot of this stuff over the years. So it sent me down a wormhole. I read a wormhole, sent me down a rabbit hole. I read the True Believer, then I read other stuff by Eric Hoffer, and then I read a Hoffer biography, and then Nzinga made transition. I couldn't talk with her about it anymore. I kind of missed those conversations because I'll read everything if I can. The only thing that's going to stop me from reading something is time. Eventually the body will give out. But, you know, this week we saw that hip hop mogul, Sean Combs, he's charged with, you know, felonies. These felonies, racketeering, people talking about RICO charges, sex trafficking, transportation with intent to engage in prostitution. You know, ironic, the Mann Act, right? That same Mann Act that came into existence when Jack Johnson, white women were following Jack Johnson across state lines. Sean Combs is no hero. Oh, no. And we're not going to get into a debate or discussion about that. You know, when we were on the radio this week, Lamont and I, thanks to Karen there on Urban View Mornings, he was talking with Ike about that, you know, and then afterwards said, yeah, you know, people say, oh, we ain't going to talk about it for 3 hours. Not today. We're not going to do that. Because, you know, the words are fueling the blaze of public salacious speculation aren't about the charges as much as they're about freak-offs, baby oil, and IV fluids. You see? Because the idea that somehow this amoral behavior, this behavior that is not socially acceptable, is the thing that there's a larger universe here. Because you got whole ass criminals. And people start saying, what about Matt Gaetz? What about, what about all of them? You know, there is no rule of law in this country as much as there is contesting interests. So yeah, Gaetz, you should be in jail right next to Diddy. But you're not going to jail right now because they need your vote, as Kevin McCarthy found out. But, you know, North Carolina Lieutenant Governor, as we said, you know, Mark Robinson, the man Donald Trump said is Martin Luther King Part 2. Part 2 appears to be a self-proclaimed black Nazi and perv. Words that, you know, those are captured from websites that he is accused of visiting regularly. Porn sites, you talking about this. What are you doing, man? But meanwhile, go on the other end of the contested moment during the weekend, Oprah Gail Winfrey was in an elaborately staged spectacle, joining Taylor Swift and giving her official word that, you know, says that Vice President Kamala Harris is the choice to make for voters participating in this year's U.S. presidential election. So in other words, what is the word when the word is given? Oprah gave the word, and there's all kind of conversation around that. It was interesting. Today's Financial Times has lunch with the FT. You know, they do this as a regular thing. They do an interview with a kind of cultural icon, cultural impactor, influencer. This is with Jack Antonoff. Let me pull up the chats here for a moment and see if anybody in Nubia or YouTube know who Jack Antonoff is. Y'all know who Jack Antonoff is? I didn't know who he was because I don't really follow. I'm not a Swiftie. You know, I try to be swift, but not a Swiftie. Yeah, let me see if anybody knows. I'm going to come back in a minute because this is an abbreviated thing. We only could go for about maybe 10, 15 more minutes. So I'm going to do this very quickly. Let me see here. Black Nazi perv. Yeah, the odds of that mixture. Yeah, I don't see. Okay, no, I see a few no's here in the YouTube. No, producer. That's right, Juana. I did not know. Read about Oprah paid money to not a show documentary. Need to find a website. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe they did, Nelson. Yeah. Jack Antonoff is a producer. That's absolutely right, Juana. His collaborations with Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey have shaped the sound of a decade. This Taylor Swift's boy, among many others. Okay. So let me move the chats back and get back to the StreamYard so I can be clear and see. Okay. Yeah. This is him. He says, don't make anything that you wouldn't die for. And it made me think about, again, Cecilia O'Leary's book, To Die For. People are sacrificing their bodies on the altar of patriotism. Prof Hunter this week, and if y'all haven't seen it, the clip was dropped this week on your YouTube channel, Karen's YouTube channel. Go and look at this snippet of the conversation that she had with a regular person that she has, which is a very, very important voice, has been for many years, Greg Palast. And his new documentary, which I encourage everybody to look at. It's very interesting. You can go on the website that they have for it and look at it on how they have all these vote challengers, these election challengers, an army of them that are going forth now to challenge your vote. They're getting people kicked off the rolls by the tens of thousands. The documentary is called Vigilantes Incorporated, Vigilantes Inc.
What's crazy about that? That's the least watched video. the least.
Of course it is, because it ain't about baby oil and IVs.
Oh my God.
It ain't about Unc and Stephen A. Smith on the campus of Howard University yesterday, apparently for First Take. People texting me, I don't be checking my texts. I get texts weeks afterwards. I'm saying, man, but somebody, I just happened to have the phone in my hands. And I said, "Oh, are you on campus?" I said, "Hell no." For what? "Oh, Stephen A. Smith is there." Great. That's a great incentive for me. Make sure I'm not up there. Why the hell would I go? What does that got to do with the price of tea in any grocery store in the world? Much less China. But this is interesting. This is what he says. I want to read this to you all, because they're talking about how you make hits and how you do all this stuff with Taylor Swift, and how I don't know the names of these songs. It's not just Taylor Swift. It's a bunch of other people. They record at Electric Ladyland. Some of y'all may know that because of Questlove, because that's where the Soul Aquarians were, Erykah Badu and all them, and of course the great Jay Dilla out of Detroit. But then you go a generation back, and that's Stevie Wonder, and then before that, Jimi Hendrix. They're in New York doing this. Taylor Swift records out of there, right? He says this. He says, "We've arrived pretty hard at the great pushback to being told what to listen to. We've just landed in this great blank spot where authenticity seems to be winning out over everything. If you look at who's cutting through right now, it's really good. Chappelle, Sabrina, Charlie XCX, who I didn't know who it was until Brat and Kamala Harris coming in. Because what we're really talking about now is trying to influence masses of people. And fervor can take you to a certain level, but then authenticity also takes you to another level, right?" Let's see what he says. He says, "Real artists, it's a culture that has been marketed to so effing heavily that you can't really market to people anymore," Antonoff says, speaking intensely now. Don't know if that's true or not, but the idea that we're always marketed to. Everything's marketing. You think Oprah would have had that thing the other night if it wasn't safe? Oprah's number one concern is her brand. What motivates that concern might be a love for humanity, a love for Black people. Very clear about it. Oprah ain't putting her little toe in it. Because remember, Drew Dixon, whose mother, Sharon Pratt Dixon, was the first female mayor. Say again.
Mayor of DC.
Mayor of DC, right? And she the one who was in the documentaries and saying, hey, Russell Simmons or me. I mean, she been trying to tell that story and did the documentary. And she said she told the white producers, I need a Black person. I'm not making this film. Y'all just follow me around. But and they brought Oprah on. But women, come on back, Prof. Because I should never said have you talked to? Go ahead, please talk to us because something about this.
No, I mean, I was I was staying out of it too for a minute, and then it was undeniable, because these things, and
right
at some point, you have to weigh, especially being Black, especially being a woman. There's a lot to weigh in terms of what you jump in and champion. And it's a thin line because, with the Michael Jackson thing, some of that is, manufactured.
Mike.
Okay,
yeah.
It's manufactured with a purpose, right? R. Kelly wasn't. Bill Cosby, we could argue, he tried to buy NBC and that's why, but no, he actually did roofie people and the rumors were there. Stop it.
On. And people knew.
Right. So I guess the question for us moving forward is, how do we hold one another accountable? This is a governance structure conversation we can only have here. Like when we know that the person that's harming, whether it's your uncle in your family, that we all sit around the table and eat Thanksgiving dinner and go to, the family reunion and nobody says anything, but all these people have been harmed in the family and there's no conversation. It's a similar thing, but we have it on a broader scale because it's celebrity.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's difficult. And Oprah jumped in something that she shouldn't have probably, at some point. And then jumped out. No, the Michael Jackson thing, she involved herself in, which was, those two young people that we're gonna have that conversation. Yes, those two young people on record liars. You set up Michael to be destroyed with two people that were lying, and then you wouldn't get involved, heavily with the
Simmons.
Yes.
And that's the point I was making. Yeah, that's exactly right. She signed on as executive producer, and Dixon has shared this story. She shared it with Kalanji Changa. If you go, there's I was watching the video the other day on his website, Black Power Media Reloaded, and Drew Dixon is talking about this. She said, it took me years to talk about this. And she said, I wasn't comfortable. There were no Black people involved. So they got Oprah Winfrey involved. She said, we were on our way to Cannes for the film festival to show, they were going to show the documentary. Oprah drops out the project. She said, She said, I watched the cut with Ava DuVernay, and Ava was like, it doesn't put hip hop in the best light. And I'm not saying any. She said, I'm not saying anything that isn't public knowledge. They wrote about it, and DuVernay gave that quote to the New York Times in the article on it. She said it was terrible because I didn't want to be seen as somebody selling out hip hop. But this happened to me, and it happened to other Black women. And she said, let me be very clear. And this is something I found very powerful in this powerful testimony. She said, you know, she said, I'm 10 toes down for this proposition. Black people are not going to survive without each other. I'm all for Black community. She said, that's why when you had these rebellions on the ships coming over here, and they would pick out the people who helped try to fight on behalf of the other Blacks, including those Black men who were fighting, saying, you're not going to do this to Black women. She said, the only way we're going to be together is to be together. The only way we're going to make it is to be together. And they would find those brothers and put them in a separate place in the ship and execute them before they got over here. I'm saying, because you can't have this unity, this kind of unity. So if anybody should be policing this kind of assault, this predatory assault on our community, it should be all of us. This isn't a woman's issue or a man's issue. You do not pick up this funky division from your funky ass oppressors, your captors. People say they are former captors. Are they really your former captors when you're parroting their talking points? But the whole point is, I think they still got your mind. But the thing is, he says here, real artists it's a culture that's been marketed to so effing heavily that you can't really market to people anymore. He says, as hard as it can be to make, the formula is actually very simple, which is don't make anything that you wouldn't die for. Like down the hill of that work. He says, it sounds pandering like BS, but my life is very, very little planning ahead. Now, you can afford that when you can just basically pan around in your 20s and join bands. And then, I mean, you have to read the whole story about who he is because you got the ability to do that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we make a mistake when we don't know what we're looking at. Winfrey endorses Kamala Harris with all the world there, and Chris Rock and Meryl Streep and all these people. Bryan Cranston's very nice. But here's the thing. Even Michael Jackson, 15 years after his death, finds himself subject again, as you just said, Prof, to words. This time coming from his estate's lawyers, because they have this is the front page of today's Financial Times weekend. There's Mike there. Why is Michael Jackson on the front page of the Financial Times? Because when you go to page 10, estate claim, some of these same people, Jackson estate claims accuser is seeking to extract $213 million. Michael Jackson's estate has initiated legal proceedings against the former associated pop icon who threatened to raise fresh allegations of inappropriate conduct before the release of a film the executors hope will quell the child sex abuse claims that overshadowed his latter years. The man and 4 others told the estate in about 2019, a decade after the singer's death, that they might go public with allegations that he had acted inappropriately with some of them when they were children. They want $213 million on top of the $16.5 million they've already got. And now the lawyers is like, okay, that's enough. Y'all lied the first time. Not only we want that money back, we gonna put you in jail. They've already reported the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office in L.A. So, but the reason I bring it up is not because we're gonna get into a discussion about Michael Jackson, but precisely because we shouldn't take our eye off the fact that this contemporary U.S. and global social structure, like the formations that preceded it, shape mass opinion with words. Now with images and other things, frequently without proof of fact, or increasingly it seems without sustained thinking, without the deliberative thinking that we're every week trying to work toward. We're going to kind of wrap this up in a second. But what is a word? What is the word? You trust Oprah over somebody else, or Taylor Swift over somebody else, or Beyonce over somebody? What do you do? What are we doing? You trust by the way, this producer dude, you know who else he worked for and produced? Kendrick Lamar. Let's be very clear about this. Let's be very clear about this as we still humming, because it's now indelibly planted in our mind. They not like us. You're gonna be humming it on January in the Super Bowl with them big ass American flags like the one Kendrick was sitting in front of when he talked about when it was introduced that he's gonna be at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. You're gonna be with that flag behind you. You're gonna die for that. You 10 toes down for that. Y'all better watch out now, because the question is, what does the word of celebrity mean, in fact, if anything? What does it signify in an election season where those who believe in their whole heart the exact opposite of what you believe in your whole heart are signing up to ruin the election. Early voting, by the way, has already started in Minnesota, South Carolina, Virginia. Early voting in Pennsylvania is on the cusp. You should be getting ready to do that. If y'all want to help do things like celebrate the 83rd birthday of Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright Jr., which is tomorrow. Happy birthday, Baba J. If y'all want to be in the spirit of that warrior, then perhaps you should think about, and I heard you say this to Greg Palaz, that you, for the first time, because I'm like you, we like going on the day. It's an energy, as you say, you like the people at the polling spot, although people are being scared now, as Greg was saying. You know, they're trying to scare off the poll workers, this kind of thing. You like voting on the day. I like voting on the day. A lot of people do. But for the first time, you're considering banking your vote. You're considering early vote. You mind sharing why?
Yeah, I was actually going to do a mail-in, and then I remembered that DeJoy is still head of the post office.
No question. Heard you say that.
And I learned, thanks to the audience, because our audience is incredible, that, you know, he was appointed for a 7-year term. He's not under the purview of the president. It's similar to the Federal Reserve, where they have these governors that appoint. Because I was like, why didn't Biden just get rid of him? You know, that's a Trump person. So I was going to mail in, because I was talking with Pam Keith about, you know, I was going to do the mail and drop it in a white neighborhood, my ballot. make sure
it get in.
Yeah, make sure we get counted. But the early voting seems to be a better choice, because I feel like they're going to do something with the mail. And
no question.
Just like bestsellers, the pre-orders matter. The pre-orders matter for that first day. Banking the vote, I think, would be the best option this time around. And with the global majority, we have a new drop. Freedom isn't free. Global majority.
I see the swag. I see the gear.
Yeah. But what I decided to do is we're going to blast everyone who's purchased with the early voting dates. So yesterday was Virginia. You know, as they come up, you know, we're going to be sending out email reminders that early voting starts today, and then give you the other states that you can vote in and the deadlines for when you can vote, because this is important. And this, the rights that they are trying to suborn and the throwing folk off the voter rolls is so evil and diabolical.
Hundreds of thousands.
What do you think about your grandmother, your mother, who's been voting in the same place all her life, and get thrown off? She shows up.
That's right.
And most of the people who show up and get thrown off don't come back. They're not doing the provisional ballots, and they know this. They know this. It is so evil. So
well, I love what he said. What he say? You think if you vote with provisional ballot, what do he call it? It was something. It's like cosplay, but not cosplay voting. In other words, provisional ballots, they're not counting those ballots, friends.
Not counting them. Yeah, they're not even counting them. So that's even more. So psychologically, you think, well, I filled out the. No, let's show up early. Virginia had lines around the corner yesterday when the polls opened, which that's right. That's a problem for people who don't want democracy.
It's a problem.
We have to show up in numbers that they're not expecting. 100 million people sat out last time.
Come on.
If those people just showed up,
that's right.
For themselves.
That's right.
For themselves, everything changes.
That's right. That's right.
As I said to my audience, I'm voting for the possibilities. I'm voting for the ability to be able to move about the cabin freely. I'm voting for the ability to be able to hold somebody accountable, to be able to protest and not get my ass whooped or jailed or worse. You know, I'm voting to not be on somebody's list that's going to be targeted and harassed. I'm voting so that we can start to build the kind of world we want to live in. And there's no perfect candidates. We make perfect candidates.
Right.
It's our responsibility to beat these people into submission. They work for us. They're servants.
Right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that's, I mean, it's so important because the election in the United States of America, the presidential election, is not 45 days away. It is today in Minnesota. Thank you, Al. Al put in the newbie chat. He already voted. Marlon said he definitely voting early in Texas. The election day is the first day of early voting.
Especially in Georgia, especially in Florida, especially in Arizona, especially in Pennsylvania, especially in Virginia.
That's right. That's right. Bank them. The election can be won. November the 5th could be a day. Imagine if November the 5th and nobody shows up at the poll but the white nationalists. Where's everybody? Oh no, we already voted. Sorry, friends. But here it is, and we know this, of course. Georgia will require hand counting of ballots. You can't count 3 million. The plan, as we know, this isn't even hidden. And now it sent me back to actually where it is sent here. Come on, because we about to wrap up. No, that's not the right one. Here it is. Yeah. Finally, of course, haven't gotten my hand on this because I like to read the pages, right? At the end of one of the last chapters in this fascist document, the mandate, which now if you go to the Heritage Foundation website, because of all the pushback, they still have this, and you can now buy the book on their website. But in order to register to buy the book, they want your name, your address. Y'all finally caught on, right? You think I was going to do that? You done lost your damn mind. I went to the Heritage. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you how I got the book. But anyway, the point is this. This is chapter 10. I'm sorry, chapter 29. Federal Election Commission. Hans A. von Spakovsky. If y'all know this guy right here. This is one of the main tools behind the overthrow, behind the attempt to create chaos and voters' rights. He's talking about what should be done with the administrative agency known as the Federal Election Commission. Don't have time to go into it now. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. But the bottom line is this. The job that they want is the imperial presidency to take it over, primarily through the Department of Justice, and to take away any notion of voter right protection and move all of it to narrowing the concept of who votes based on this idea of everything from, well, I'm not going to get into details, but the bottom line is this. The gist of this is only real Americans should vote. Here's a bulletin. Everybody in this room right now, everybody in these rooms right now, everybody who's involved with this, y'all not real Americans. And they're trying to figure out, this is why Junior Varsity Vance said, I don't care if the Haitians are here illegally. They're illegal. And they are illegal. Not to Junior Varsity. Junior Varsity is the Manchurian candidate. He's owned by billionaires and the people who need to loosen, get more tax cuts, and be able to run, you know, as you say, move freely around the cabin called global finance capital. But he's talking to the people who absolutely believe in their whole hearts. They're defending America. They're defending America, you see. And those are the people who John Roberts knows are important to the billionaire class, which is why you see the decision in Citizens United, because when you have unrestricted money available to market to those people, to continue to suffuse them with the message that I'm here for you, the true Americans, you can get the hillbilly horde out to the polls. And of course, today's New York Times in Georgia, the goal isn't just to restrict people and suppress their votes so that you don't win the popular vote by those votes that you're counting. The trick is to slow the counting so far that you go beyond the certification date and count on triggering a throw to the House of Representatives where the white nationalists control the House and you anoint Donald Trump. See, that's the trick. So it isn't just about suppressing your vote. It's not just about throwing you off the rolls. If those things fail, and the early voting can ensure that they do, the trick then is, let's count all the ballots by hand and introduce errors, and then the lawsuits come. Oh, we're past the date. You know what? We can't certify this election. Okay, now you throw it to the House of Representatives and we pick the president. How you think that's going to work out? Kamala Harris said, you come in her house, you're going to get shot, which of course is a joke because the Secret Service would have gotten you at the Naval Observatory before you ever get to her house. But how do you think that's going to work out, friends? The tactic is to always change the conversation. So while we talking about guns in the bushes, baby oil, and IV fluids, they are moving on the policy thing to steal the election. Greg Palast, I would encourage you to watch that. So let's round this up. Donald Trump's in North Carolina today. They're saying Robinson's not going to be there. It don't mean he's going to reject Robinson, because he understands that Robinson's marketing to the true believers. These are the ones that would say women can't have abortions. What? But it's my body. No, it's my country, and I'm a patriot. You're not real, and I'm going to stop you from touching your own body. Now at night, I'm going to touch my own body on the website, the same one that Mark Robinson is on. Why? Because I understand that my Christianity means that all the hypocrisy is folded into my belief system. I am, as Mark Robinson would say, he types in, I am a perv. I am a black Nazi. Wow. People say that's crazy. It's not crazy if you understand the true believer, because that's okay in that perverted sense. The same people watching Fox football were watching Married with Children, and them same people was getting up going to church the next morning. Please understand, it's all part of a similar thing. Kamala Harris was in Georgia on Friday, this past Friday, talking about abortions. Talking about Georgia and the stealing vote. Georgia early voting opens up. Go bank the vote. Go bank the vote. Make November the 5th irrelevant. In other words, election day is not 45 days from now. It's not 6 weeks from now. Election day is today if early voting started. Election day is the day you vote. You understand? So the audience, we're not an audience now. We are participants. We are participants of this now. And understand when the word is given for us in African societies, African people, generally speaking, grounded in this principle, word is bond. This is the concept of speech. In other words, the word has to be the word itself, it has to mean the action itself. When you see Jack Antonoff writing on those trends, it made me think about how the department store people now, this was in the Financial Times today as well. I won't go into it because we're about to wrap this up, but they have an article about how, in fact, I'll just show you the bottom if I can get to the back page quickly. No, where was it at? House and home, business, might be in the lifestyle section. Anyway, the upshot of it is that the department store companies are going out of business, and they are, I'm not going to be able to find it quickly, so I just relate it. The department stores, Macy's, Nordstrom's, all these places, Sears and them already, they go into bankruptcy, they come out, but when they come back, they're coming back as privately held corporations. They're taking them off the public stock options. The public stock is changed. So Nordstrom's is trying to buy itself back. The family that started Nordstrom's trying to buy itself back and make it private and figure out how they can go back into retail and retool it. Because Macy's is avoiding a sale. They don't want to be bought because they know that the people who have the most money trying to buy them, they're after them for the real estate. If y'all know where the flagship Macy's is in Manhattan, you know why. They want the real estate. They don't care about the retail. And if they buy them and lease back, then Macy's is going to be restricted, right? But the point is this. What caught my eye was the private people include families. Nordstrom's founding family, they want it back. They understand values is what can drive this, because the department stores are dead. People are buying stuff online. People will be, are their brand loyal? We do all that, but you got to be able to bring this back down to your vision. This is how they're driving the fascist thing in the election of 2024 here in the United States. You got to have the true believers. They don't care. If you can argue about people are dumb, somebody's mind is melted, he's 78 years old, none of that matters to the true believer. And the First Amendment strategy of John Roberts and that Supreme Court is narrowing this down to, and Hans Van Spassky says it in the Project 2025, this is about the idea of making sure freedom of expression. When they say freedom of expression, when they say freedom and freedom to express themselves, what they mean is freedom to have the narrow worldview superimposed on everybody else, and you can't stop people by law. You can't stop people by law. There is no crime for saying that these people are illegals, but they're legally, it doesn't matter what the truth is. I'm going to say this, and it's protected speech. Okay, is it also protected speech to put $1 billion in a campaign in a few weeks like these billionaires probably lined up to do for Donald Trump? Yes, that's protected speech too, Citizens United. Oh, well, damn. Is it protected speech to say that Kamala Harris is, oh yeah, I can say all that. I can do all that. And then you get the hillbillies riled up. They're true believers, and they move in, and they've all signed to be election judges or election monitors, which means messing with your grandmama in a line in Atlanta. And next thing you know, you in jail, the hillbilly is dead, and the election is in chaos. Vote early. Friends, they've already, and believe me, even the Republican Attorney General in Georgia is going to go to court on this, because you can't count 3 million ballots by hand after the election on November the 5th. But guess what? The goal ain't to count 3 million. The goal is to delay and get it to the House of Representatives. So please understand that imperial presidency model. This is John Roberts in the long game of the First Amendment. They see themselves as defending their project, and they are willing to die for, as Cecilia O'Leary says it, to die for it. So kind of wind up with this. Politicians are not your friends. Please understand that. Max Boot has a new book on Ronald Reagan. He grew up a Reagan fan. He grew up a right-wing guy. He did this research, and over the years, he's begun to change. And after he did this massive new biography of Ronald Reagan, I'm pointing to it because it's in the other room. I'm reading it little by little. He's saying, nah, this guy right here is responsible for this Trump stuff. And then black people are saying, duh, you ain't got to read no 700-page book to get to that. But the point is that people who believed in Ronald Reagan are true believers. True believers. They are true believers in Israel. You see these killers threw 3 Palestinians off a roof the other day in that area. And whether they were alive or dead is irrelevant. They're alive, it's a war crime. They dead, it's a war crime. All the pages blowing up in people's pockets as Israel engages in terrorist actions in that region. And a war is imminent. You know how BB continues to do his mass murder so he stays out of jail? You know how BB, who has an interest in staying out of jail, continues this? He keys in on the true believers. So you can't win through appealing to rationality. That's not what's at play. although you may see some action soon because bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, said that they are not going to establish diplomatic relationships with Israel until this war ends, and that might be the thing that puts its thumb on the scale. Come on back, Prof. There's one other thing I want to mention, but I want to do it with you together while we're on screen because we're gonna get off now. Again, I can't thank you enough for allowing us to try to carry the light with the torch lit by Joe Madison on Urban View. We recorded an interview yesterday. And shout out to Sam and everybody on the channel with Michael Vick.
I saw that.
I mean, Mike Vick,
I saw that.
And my brother-in-law, shout out my brother-in-law Randy Fuller, who played in the NFL, played with Mike with the Falcons, and my nephew met him when he's a little boy. He always still talks about that. We talked about that a little yesterday off Mike, but he got this new documentary coming out, The Rise of the Black Quarterback. And I'm always suspicious, like what's going on? But his producer, who did the documentary on Fritz Pollard and Jim Brown, I know that cat. So I'm like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. And I watched it. It comes out the 24th. Watching Michael Vick over the arc of 3+ hours begin with the HBCU quarterbacks. Because I'm looking for Eldridge Dickey. Dickey is in there. Shaq Harris is in there. Marvin Briscoe, all of them, and the ones who are alive, Vic goes and talks to them. And then our generation, Warren Moon, and all those people, he's talking. It's almost like a father and son conversation he has with Warren Moon. And then the young boys, he goes to the draft, and all those cats whose names I don't know because I stopped watching football, coming up to him like, "Thank you, Mike." He says, "Nah, it didn't start with me." So in the conversation, but this is the first question I asked him, and we'll see, because I think it's probably going to air on Thursday, but I want to say this. I said, "Hey, man, you were at Virginia Tech." "Yeah." I said, "You ever take a class with Nikki Giovanni?" That's the first thing I wanted to know. When his face lit up, he says, "Nikki Giovanni, man, she was like, man, I never missed her class. She required me to be a student. And she told me, you're going to be everywhere. You got to be better." And then he said, "I was sitting in the back." People sit in the back, but they kept passing papers back for me to sign autographs. She said, "Mr. Vick, come sit in the front." She made him sit in the front. And then he said, this was the thing that killed me, Lincoln. He says this. He says, because I asked him, I said, "What would NIL be, man?" He said, "Man, let me tell you. If I had NIL, I'd have stayed in school." He said, "I cried when I left Virginia Tech. I wanted to be a student." He said, "Nikki Giovanni changed my life. The way she looked, I would have stayed." I could have made that money. And I thought about, because Arch Manning in today's New York Times sports section saying, his NIL will allow him to stay in school. NIL might mean that some of these young people stay in school. And Michael Vick said that out of his mouth, and he name checked Nikki Giovanni is the reason. I'm gonna stop with that.
No,
it was just coming from me.
Because just as you're talking about the Nordstrom family, we have so many corporations and companies in our cipher and outside, folk that are not melanated. That serve the community, because you ain't got to be black to serve the black community. That we could create a whole NIL situation where these young people can stay in school, where they don't need to get their brains knocked around, where they can wear our brands and we can support them, and they can go on if they want to go on professionally and still have that and still maintain their integrity and not be victimized by a system that is just using them like a plantation enslaved person.
That's right.
With a lot more money and resources. But
right.
Yeah, I think that the tide is changing. And
it is changing.
And it's our responsibility to make sure it changes.
That's exactly. It is our responsibility. It is our responsibility. Yes, a lot going on today. Black Blockchain Summit. Somebody just said Nubia is at Howard. I saw that. African American Parade. Oh, you know what, Prof? After we talked about Moo and Oink, all you Chicago Negroes, I did not know what Moo and Oink was till years ago when I first went to Chicago. All those stores are out of business, but a black group bought the license to Moo and Oink. I did not know that until we were talking about Moo and Oink, so I went and looked it up. When I found that out, Moo and Oink doesn't exist as a brick and mortar store, so you can't go. But on the website, they brand and they sell. It's black owned, so I ordered this.
Let me go do this.
That's the Moo and Oink sign I saw in Chicago. Like, I know y'all ain't got a cow and a pig on a billboard on the south side of Chicago. So Moo and Oink, I got my Moo and Oink coffee cup because it's black owned now. That tripped me out. But to the point you make it, you ain't got to support your people.
Right. You like to get your drink on? Get you some Uncle Nearest.
Get you some Uncle Nearest.
And it's better tasting, apparently. I don't drink, but people who do drink.
Is that what they say?
They say it tastes better than the Jack Daniel.
Well,
That's the original formula.
it's the original formula.
Yeah.
And as Karen Hunter might say, and would say, and is wearing right now, freedom ain't free. So the drop is not there it is. Freedom isn't.
I'm gonna keep the English going.
No.
And
let me be very, let me correct myself as well, because of course when Sojourner Truth gave that famous speech and the white women gave it out in a transcript as "Ain't I a Woman," as it is corrected by our sister Nell Irvin Painter in her biography of Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth's people have been captured by the white boys out
the Dutch,
of
right? Or the
Dutch.
Yeah.
That's right. Isabella was the name they gave her. She renamed herself Governance Sojourner Truth. She wouldn't have said ain't. She'd have said isn't. So that the sweatshirts, the shirts, the branding there, freedom isn't free. That's how Sojourner Truth would have said it, not ain't. So thank you.
When they started putting Z on the end of boys, I was like, we not gonna ever get.
Yeah, that's my pet peeve too. All the HBCUs saying the Howard University with 2 E's, or the Jackson State, the I love. I'm sorry, y'all. I get off the boat with 1 E. 2 E's, I'm good. I mean, I understand it's creative, it's beautiful, but no, I'm good.
Yes. I love you.
Love you too.
Love you.
Love you all. See you all Monday night.
All right, Dr. Carr. Have a great weekend.
All right, Prof Hunter. Talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.